Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. We've got people just joining us at the moment. I'm hoping that we'll get some of the rest of you into this conversation today. I'm joined today by Naomi. Hi, Naomi.
Hello.
Laura can't be with us today, so she's off. Kevin is supposed to be coming on because he's got some information to share with us. So I'm hoping he's going to be on soon. We've got Gareth with us. Hi, Gareth.
Yeah.
And Liz is probably not going to be with us either because she's also had another prior appointment. So there we go. So let me just click through slides here. I just wanted to briefly mention this is that Peter Carter has joined Team NetSol today, so some of you will be hearing from Peter in due course. So he's with us, and also for anybody who's new on this meeting, if you want to join in, just raise your hand electronically or type in the box, and then we'll open up the lines. So still no sign of Kevin, I take it. Is that right, Jake?
I can't see Kevin's name in the list at all. He's not in the list of people who have been invited.
He's deleted himself out, hasn't he?
You might have to invite him back in.
Yeah, can you do that? Can you invite him in there, Jake? Or do I have to do it?
I think you'll have to do it. I'm not sure.
Oh, here's Kevin. Kevin's here. Hi, Kevin. You're muted.
Yeah, apologies for the delay. You might be surprised. I was talking about energy payments.
Well, who could have imagined? Who could have imagined?
Yes, yeah. So anyway, sorry for being a few minutes late, Malcolm.
No, that's okay. I was just getting panicky there because you're on first to talk about
council tax and business rates.
Yes, other than the
energy payment. Okay, we did have a chat before.
We'll come to that in a second.
Yeah. But I'm sure that's going to take up the last part of this meeting, so I'll be brief on my part. It's quiet on council tax. Well, I thought it was quiet until last Thursday, so I'll skirt over council tax. Not really much happening in that world at the moment, is there? Business rates update. Obviously, there's the grants, the OHL grants to the 18th of March. No fresh guidance in respect of that. Obviously, you've got to have everything paid out and dealt with by the 31st of March. The ARG is ongoing, 31st of March. No end date on claiming, but you just have to have everything done by the 31st of March. All reconciliations and assurance work is on hold until April, although we have pointed out to BIS that another department has made us rather busy in April. So they might want to revisit that again. On the business rate side, CAF, take-up is, unless anyone tells me different, very, very poor. This is the COVID Additional Relief Fund. We're looking at that. My scheme closes on the 18th of March, but you've got until the 30th of September to award or pay that based on some legislation that allows you to do discretionary relief up to the 30th of September in the year following the financial year you award it. ERD, there's the 66% this year to claim for, with a 50% next year with varying cash caps. Once again, I'm taking it off our system and putting it and making people apply again, which has been very interesting. We've had, I think, about 90 opt-outs so far for this year, and waiting to see. Business rates, very volatile, obviously leading up to the revaluation in 23. Our collection is coming back actually in our place because we made the decision to take ERD off and make them apply for it. And they are coming back in trickles, but obviously some haven't come back at all because my payments on ERD was about 23 million. With 100%, it's now running about 6%. So, and businesses don't like to put an application form in for one reason or another. So it's quite an interesting one, that one. Overall, we're not really that busy. Well, I'll talk about the energy payments next, I imagine, Graham, Malcolm.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Do you want to talk about the energy payments?
In a second. Let me speak to Naomi first. Naomi, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with Kevin. Council tax, Touchwood, is fairly quiet at the moment. Allows us, this month and next to sort of catch up. People trying to get more money in so that our recovery rates are as good as they possibly can be. Business rates, not my area of expertise, but I've heard from my colleague, also a Kevin. They sound very similar to Kevin Stewart's position on business rates.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. Right, what should we talk about now then?
Nothing much around, did we?
Right. Should I talk about the known unknowns or the known knowns?
Tell us what you know, Kevin.
Well, I'm just lucky guessing here, so please note. You will have noticed that the Chancellor made an announcement on Thursday morning saying that there was going to be a council tax rebate to offset against people's energy bills. And they issued a guidance note that's very helpful on there. But if you'll notice, the council tax information letter published later on Thursday seemed to contradict the Treasury, because they didn't call it a council tax rebate. They actually called it a payment outside the council tax system within that information letter. So the first things first, is not a rebate according to DLUHC. It will not be shown against the bill. It will be a separate payment from what I know. The guidance is due this week. I have not seen a draft of that yet, but the guidance is due to be out this week. And effectively, I think we're talking about three schemes here. One is for the DDs, A to D. We have about 41,000 properties roughly at Mid Sussex, of which 74% are on DD. So I'm looking about 10,500. Obviously, there might be some exemptions and things within that. 10,500 without DD. Whether we can make direct payments to those cases or whether we have to do checks for fraud remains to be seen. But they're ones we could get out payments out quite quickly to. And we're also planning a DD campaign as part of that to try and encourage more to go onto it. Then you've got your second scheme, which is basically the A to Ds without DDs, where you've got to have some form of application process to actually get their bank details in, because you can have to pay through their bank accounts. So you'll obviously have to do that. Now, they will need some legislation for this, apparently, and you should be able to get the guidance and open up your application process, but I'm told you will not be able to pay until April. One could argue whether or not it could have been shown as a rebate against your council tax bill. I'd suggested it might have taken some time to do that, and the payment wouldn't have gone out in April, and probably anyone doing annual billing this year would have lost even more hair than I've got. So obviously there's the issues with that. There's also a discretionary scheme. We do not know the funding yet. I can't remember the full totals of that. I'm probably looking, and obviously this will depend on the funding we get. I'm looking about my CTS hardship cases that are E to H, banded E to H, probably disabled relief, and any other such schemes to try and keep the process as simplistic as possible in terms of everything we do and how we do it. So I think you've got three schemes done outside your revenue system, but you'll need the data from your revenue system over to that particular system. I'm probably quite lucky because I've probably got a system that's virtually built based on the business grants. I just need to get my council tax data across to it, which obviously we're trying to work on as quickly as possible, waiting for the guidance as well to come as well. I'm under no illusion to the impact of this on an already busy and heavily overworked service, the Revs and Bens side. I didn't decide to retire straight away. I'm waiting till October, but I'm under no illusions to the scale of this on top of everything else that we've had. It's probably, as I put in one of my quotes, it's just not fair anymore.
Naomi.
Okay. Yeah, for us, we've got A to D, we've got about 45,000 properties. I think we're running about 70, low to mid 70% DDs. We are looking to pay them outside of the council tax application. So that will go straight through T1 and get the money out the door. We are also concerned about whether we have to do prepayment checks. That would just put the brakes on getting any money out quickly, to be honest. Kevin?
I would just argue on that. That is something we have pointed out and asked for a clarification from DLUHC. We did say about the fraud, we did say about the checks, but you've got to bear in mind, this is payment going out the door. This scheme is led by the Treasury. DLUHC only found out themselves, I think, on Monday and Tuesday last week. So they didn't have very, very much notice at all and were told, make it happen. How do you make it happen? And they did reach out to talk to a few leading practitioners before the announcement was made. My view is that the Treasury are going to be monitoring this as toughly as the grants, because it's money going out. It's very different to reliefs, and therefore the assurance and the reconciliations on this is going to be endless.
It's going to be a nightmare.
I don't dispute that.
For the second group, which is the A to Ds, where we don't have bank details, yeah, it's going to have to be some sort of data gathering process of their bank details to allow us to do that. Where we hold that information, I don't know. Obviously with DD payers, we hold that information within the revenues and benefits application. Will we be reverse putting information in there? Bit of a GDPR problem on that one. So just need to think about that. We're also going to use this whole process as an opportunity to get more people on DD. So if they're not on DD, we're going to say, would you like to? Not being on DD has delayed your payment, blah, 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 blah. We do need to, your billing, have a line on the bill, apparently.
Yes.
Watch out in your bank account. So we need to make sure that our DD payers have that, but our non-DD payers have something different. And the discretionary, which was 144 million nationally, I think it was. Yeah, CTRS, looking at those, also looking at the disabled band relief people.
Are you retiring too, Naomi?
Sorry?
Are you retiring too?
Ah, not
30
quite yet.
years to go.
Would have been great. So yeah, we're sort of in parallel with what Kevin's doing, really.
We have a hand raised from Marlene. Marlene has a question.
Yeah, Marlene.
Hi, just a quick one. Do we know whether the line has to actually physically be on the bill or whether it can be on just the literature that accompanies it?
That we don't know for certain yet. I believe they want it on the back of the bill so it physically goes out and the people see it rather than it be sent to a website, but that is still under discussion.
So that will come in the guidance with it.
We are told they have to be very clear one way or the other.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Marlene. And I think, Liz, you had your hand raised, and we also want to hear from Gareth as well. So, Liz, start with you.
I think Liz put her hand down because she actually disconnected.
Oh, right, okay. I wasn't expecting Liz to be on, but maybe she was just came on to tell us that she's not going to be on.
By the way, we don't know, before Gareth starts, we don't actually know what the schemes are in Wales, Scotland or Ireland. It's not the same.
No. I mean, I think Wales is thinking. It didn't have much notice either. It did actually get around to doubling its own winter fuel scheme a few days before this announcement. So the £100 that was going to everybody has been increased to £200. So this is going to be another lump sum coming in, which we guess will probably be distributed in much the same kind of way. But I think the thing that interests me about this announcement is that it's really not actually kind of very evenly spread. If you look at local authorities around the country, there are a dozen or so of them that have less than half of their properties that fall in those bands. They're the usual suspects, Westminster, City of London, Kensington and Chelsea and so on. But there are 24 or so, I think, that have got about 19 out of 20 of their properties fall in the band. So a huge number there. And they're biggies. They include Manchester and Liverpool and so on. So the money is going to go geographically quite differently across the country. And of course, there's the argument that we're talking about 1991 valuations in England, 2003 in Wales.
It's the Department of Levelling Up, Gareth.
Yes, I think there's levelling and there's levelling and there's levelling. But I mean, if you look at things that you know, the value of properties, what, 20, 30 years ago, 1991, the difference, the increase in value has been enormous across the country as well, but they still fall in the same band. So you're going to get properties in London with 700,000 or 800,000 quid that get the rebate, and properties in, you know, more deprived areas that are still, you know, 150,000 who won't.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you,
Yeah, Bob.
raised his hand.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah,
no asking a difficult question, Bob.
my reputation precedes me.
I certainly know all about you.
It's a different Bob Wagstaff, Kevin.
Doubtful.
I'm just wondering what you think, Kevin, about how we're going to deal with people who say their parents pay their council tax bill for them by direct debit, so the bank account doesn't actually belong to the taxpayer. How are we going to identify those, and will it match if we send the rebate to the wrong person?
That's a very, very good point, and I'm planning to have a number of processes in place to double check that the name correlates with the bank account for the liable person. We've actually explained this. We've also explained about HMOs. We've also explained about some exemptions, because certain exemptions are not eligible. But what about SMIs, for example? They'll probably have a big heating bill and things like that as well. And what about disabled people? So there's a number of things still to bottom out in the guidance. And of course, the other thing is we don't yet know, I think Naomi did mention it, what sort of compliance there will be, even in respect to the DDs. Are we just paying it out, or do we have to have the person just clarify that the details are correct? So a very, very good question, Bob, for which I think the jury's out at the moment.
I'll add, what about students, landlords?
Well, the house of multiple occupation, where the landlord is responsible for the bill, and in the press this week, and the press is still calling it a council tax rebate. I reckon the whole of the population will expect 150 off their band A to D bills come the bills going out.
I think about the situation where students aren't liable.
Yes.
Is the hierarchy still includes the landlord then, does it?
Yeah, it still goes to the landlord. Yeah. So, and in which case, do we pay the landlord, even though there's no bill, or do we pay the tenants? Good question on that one.
So I've got a question for you all, which is, I mean, the curious thing about this is, for me, is that, you know, it's the point you kind of picked up, which is, yeah, the terminology when it was being announced and also in the press was this was going to be a rebate. It seemed to me as though somewhere along the line somebody had explained to the Chancellor exactly how council tax and council tax reduction worked, and now we've got something completely different, have we not?
Yeah, Malcolm. I'm not going to say much more for fear of implicating myself, but some people did explain how council tax works to them.
Right. Okay. And yes. Okay. I'm not going to ask any.
Yeah.
Any
they were also explained that council tax is nothing to do with energy payments, and why the hell? Because every single authority will give it to revenues and benefits to do, and council tax department, which are the same people who've done the grants for the last 22 and a half months, which once again means that the most busy section in the whole council is the one getting this again, which is no end in sight in respect of it. But I think if you looked at the software providers, and obviously I'm quite close to at least one of those, they'd have struggled to get it in on time. You're already talking about annual billing. We're virtually on top of annual billing now. It's a, for example, we're test billing this coming weekend. You just couldn't have done it in time, in my view. And the software companies would have wanted time. The scripts alone would take 2 to 3 weeks. You'd just be struggling to get it within your annual billing.
Yeah, I mean, let's just pick up on that for a second. I mean, the software providers could legitimately argue that this is not council tax at all.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it's a completely different system that they're being asked to.
Well, I think the council tax information letter that was sent last week was very clear. It was a payment outside the council tax system using extracts from your council tax system.
And what purpose under GDPR are these being made? And
There's
presumably
legislation, but they're planning to take legislation through Parliament for it
in order to give it a purpose.
in order to give it a purpose. So the guidelines will be out this week. I think there's legislation being considered for it. I think it's got to be primary legislation to give it. The payments are due out in April. So a very, very busy time is going to be made even busier. And don't forget, BIS will be starting the grants assurance and reconciliation work in April at a time when you're going to just be, well, it's going to be a whole different ball game, isn't it?
We've got a hand up from John Gibbs.
Oh yes, John Gibbs, come in, John Gibbs.
Hi there. Yeah, Kevin's right. It's awkward. The way we're looking at this is that it's very similar to the business rate grant payments that went out. So we actually developed a solution there to identify the accounts where direct debit was already on the account and payments being made. We were able to create a payment transaction, but not treated as a payment on the account, and immediately create a refund transaction. So that got the payment out. So we're looking to do a similar thing here where direct debit isn't on the current payment method. We're able to generate an email letter with a link to an online form, which basically asks them for their bank details in order to create that refund record and get that sent out.
John, could I ask a follow-up question? What's your timescales?
We're starting development now. It won't be ready for billing because it's too much of a risk, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Also, it depends on how they're going to deal with an effective date for when these payments need to be made in relation to. So is it going to be occupants as at the 1st of April?
That we
I
haven't
missed the
made
first
clear
part.
yet.
No, I missed
They
the
haven't
first
made
part of
that
this
clear.
talk. But
They've just said payments should be made in April. They haven't given us an effective date.
So I'm personally, very personal view is that it would be those who are there on the 1st of April. So could you run it early anyway, given the scale of changes that are made between now and April? And also what happens with retrospective changes?
Yep,
So,
that's some good questions there. And of course, if you've got the people not on DD currently, you've got to have some sort of campaign application form to get their information in before April.
Absolutely. Or it could be after their first payment in April, treat this as being a DD take-up campaign as well as them applying. So clever wording on the form, you're capturing their bank details. Can we now use these for direct debit? On you go. So it could actually massively improve your DD take-up, potentially.
Yes,
I live in this ideal world.
I've also been suggesting using this as a CTR take-up campaign.
Yeah.
Well, I think the discretionary scheme should cover your CTR cases for band E to H, plus probably disabled relief, and obviously it would depend on the funding you get off that 114 million. But John's quite right. It probably could be done within the system, but it will be tight, and I would say it'd be difficult to do in time for April.
We'll manage that quite easily. We'll have something by early March.
Can I raise a separate question then in relation to this, which is a little bit more around the policy side and the future? Kevin, I mean, you said earlier, it's been dumped on council tax, but to put the government position on this is they argue that they've kind of finally woken up to the idea that council tax could be the key to making universal payments. So do we think there could be more coming along the line for this?
Well, several things there. Can I first state, as I've got Megan, my benefit manager, I'm thinking of having the discretionary scheme administered by the benefits side of things as well. It's all right. I've spoken to Megan about that. But
she's crying.
Yeah. Well, she's throwing something at me, I think, at the moment, but that's a separate issue. But at the end of the day, I just feel that we've been too good for our own case. What we've achieved over the last 2 years has been exceptional, and we're just getting dumped on more and more. They wanted to get out to homeowners. obviously the council tax system is a system that could be done, and to actually do that. Thank you, Megan. But it's totally unrelated to council tax. It's for energy payments. And people have already said council tax, it could be owners that are responsible in some instances for council tax. Okay, usually it's the resident, yeah, accept that, but not in every case. So is it really a full property for property of the liable person sort of thing, being a full operative caseload point for a full take up of who's liable in that household for energy bills? Probably isn't.
It isn't, but that's actually the point I think probably I'm trying to make, is if the government now looks at council tax and goes, well, here's an easy way for us to identify, in terms of our levelling up agenda, groups of people universally that we can identify in these, because they're in these council tax bands, then my question is isn't it just natural that we will see some more stuff come along the lines that will be targeted at that group?
Well, I've told the Treasury and DLHUC not to do anything before the 31st of October, Malcolm.
Okay, but that's so, Gareth, can you see the government sort of looking at council tax as being not council tax itself here? They're utilising the banding as a way of delivering additional services.
I think it's understandable to a certain extent, isn't it? I mean, what you managed to do is to identify a way of getting at, first of all, properties rather than people, which is kind of fairly important as far as energy usage is concerned, I guess. And the assumption that the less valuable properties are likely to have the poorer people in them. So I can understand the approach, and it is broad brush and it is crude, and there will be exceptions and outliers and unfairnesses. But I guess that's all linked to the speed at which you need to get some help to some people.
We have a comment from Bob. Asking, why haven't they asked the energy companies to make these payments?
Aren't they having to gate a deduction, which is a sort of loan deduction, but they've been given 6 months to prepare for it?
Yes,
that's a lot unfairer as well. In fact, the way that's going to work. I might get my loan this week and then sort of move out and never have to pay a bill again to repay it. Yeah,
and also people who aren't paying energy bills today are going to end up paying the £40 back over the next 5 years, even though they didn't get the loan in the first instance.
Bob would like to comment.
Yeah, please,
Bob.
Bob.
I'm just confused about why this is coming to council tax rather than the energy companies. And the energy companies can identify which properties are in bands A to D. So why are we being asked to make the payments? If they want to start reducing council tax, are they going to ask the energy companies to have a council tax rebate payment? It just seems to me a completely cack-handed way to reduce this payment. Just knock it off the energy bills if that's what they want to do, because the energy companies know who the bill payers are.
Bob, you make a great deal of sense as ever, but how does the government know which energy company that person pays to, etc.? So that would be quite difficult probably to administer. And I think we've been stung by being so good at how we delivered the grants. So they've thought, OK, we'll give it to local government. As the Chancellor, if you're noticing his statement on Thursday or in the question time, local authorities are very good at doing this and sending out money. I think we've been brushed with a thing of doing a job too well.
I agree, Kevin. I think, we do have an incredibly good track record with the business grants, using council tax as a vehicle for something completely unrelated is obscure, but now it's becoming mainstream. I think watch this space, it will be used again and again. There's a bit of a slippery slope. And let's face it, I mean, why were local authorities and probably up and down the country, the benefit teams doing self-isolation payments? What the heck's that got to do with the price of fish? So yeah, a very safe pair of hands, local authorities. And watch this space.
There is another reason, though, isn't there, Naomi, why local authorities might be chosen, though. I mean, over, other other bodies, other government bodies that might administer this over the energy companies. I mean, to begin with, the energy companies have never shown themselves to be particularly good at finding people in need, unless they're actually sort of, there's bad press coming their way. Secondly, the whole point about the energy companies getting the £200 end of things in the form that it has is because otherwise anything else cuts into the energy company's profits. And then you've got that whole issue, particularly for a Tory party, of which would then have to get into the areas of actually,
yeah, but it's quite ironic
in order to into the private sector companies. Yeah, it is ironic. They should never have been privatized.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that the companies are probably going to make massive profits this year. In terms of it, local authorities are struggling for cash. We've been absolutely rushed off our feet with all the additional duties, and don't forget that's on top of the day job. That's on top of the day job, and the collection rates are just staggeringly good, and the performance in benefits as well, staggeringly good considering you've got all these other options. Notice John has put his comment here about how well local authorities have done, and the government would never have been able to get the grants out like we have done. A staggering performance.
Yes, but we know the road to hell is always paved with good intentions, isn't it? And also, if you want a job done, ask a busy person. It's how that tends to work.
Yes, but it's just an appreciation by others of how busy we are, and probably we've made a very complex job look very simplistic.
And there's got to be a point when local authority employees go, do you know what? I've had enough.
Yeah, and I think I've done that.
Well, I know some colleagues have decided that at certain points during this year and last year, do you know what? I've had enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. That's an underlying risk, isn't it? But if you think about the way in which many of these things have been dealt with, nurses have not been particularly rewarded for the efforts that they put in, the risks that they took, and all of those things. This does not seem to me to be a government that rewards those that deliver or achieve, but is prepared to throw a party for those people who perhaps.
Oh, I love that comment, Malcolm.
Less.
Yeah, they're prepared to throw a party for anyone, apparently, but that's a separate issue.
I seem to recall having seen Gary Lascelles make a comment, and Gary, you also made a comment in the WhatsApp group. Do you want to expand on that for us? I see you've got a yellow, which might mean you've gone away.
No, I'm here, Malcolm.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just expecting that, like these payments that I just can't see in a number of households that we deal with on a daily basis through discretionary schemes that we already administer, that these payments aren't going to get anywhere near actually the energy companies, because there's going to be other demands on the household that are potentially more pressing that they see from their perspective. And if we're paying direct into bank accounts, then they're just going to be swallowed up unless there is that direction around appropriation of funds, that they're not even going to get that money to pay towards their energy. So, and I feel that with that in mind, we're probably going to get a lot of contact from customers who are saying, please don't pay me by direct debit. Can you pay me by a check? Can you pay me by an alternate method? And obviously we're going to have all of that to deal with as well. So it's going to be a complex time for us, I think.
Yeah,
even more so than normal. I quite agree with that comment.
And Gareth, I assume that does underline a risk if people are, already into their overdrafts, official or otherwise. This money will disappear to pay off the overdraft rather than anything else, won't it?
Certainly, that's the commonest kind of bank policy, is to grab anything they can get their hands on if there's a debt there. I think it's a real kind of genuine issue. If this money is intended to go to reduce fuel costs, then getting it directly applied to the fuel bill is the obvious way of doing that. coming back to the Welsh Government again, they have labelled their £200 as a kind of a winter fuel support payment. But it's also very clear that it doesn't have to be spent on winter fuel. It's going to be kind of a cash payment out there with the same kind of problems, because when I say cash, I don't mean brown envelopes. It's going to be sort of into banks again.
They're not going to pay it out as Bitcoin then.
I don't think Welsh Government's terribly into cryptocurrencies at the moment.
So let me ask another question, which is the one really that the Resolution Foundation kind of sort of identified in their very good report. So it was done very quickly. There are some questionable bits in there, but largely speaking, all of these charts that are on the screen at the bottom there, they all kind of show that actually all of this probably won't make a huge amount of difference, certainly not in the long term. Most of this is at best going to break even against the increases in national insurance contributions. Has that been your reading as well, Gareth?
Unmute. Yeah, broadly. I mean, I think it's a well-proven policy the government has done, isn't it? They've taken a lot of money away from a lot of people with things like the £20 a week UC and tax credit cut, and then tried to avoid talking too much about that and given a little bit of it back and publicised that enormously in the hopes that they'll be seen as being good and giving people rather than bad and taking away people. So yeah, the offset is still very, very much negative in terms of kind of the cost of living generally and the way in which the government's treated it. I think government's been shafted, of course, by the energy stuff and the consequence that that's going to have on overall cost of living increases, whether it be CPI, RPI, or Vimes boot indexes. They're all a lot higher than the level that they've used to operate other things by.
And in the midst of this, we've still got everything else going on, as you say, in terms of, you know, the rise in the price of food and so on and so forth. I mean,
we'll probably be giving out food vouchers next to every household.
Well, I mean, Liz raises this, doesn't she, on a fairly regular basis. Now she's not with us, I feel obliged to raise it for her, which of course is who could have ever imagined that food banks were going to become a critical part of the distribution of welfare. But I mean, it does sort of start to beg the question about whether you'll reintroduce the old rates collectors who will be cycling around your villages handing out food parcels and cash rather than necessarily collecting money. So
you've fallen into their trap there, Malcolm. It's not distribution of welfare, it's distribution of charity.
Yes.
Which is a very different thing.
Yes, that's true. It's true. Okay, does anybody else got any comments that they want to make? I'll make it 12:39 now, so we're just coming up to the end of our time. But we would be pleased to hear from anybody. Does anybody have a cunning plan in place already? That's what I'd be quite interested in, apart from Kevin. Just out of... No, everybody's been quiet. Do we know what's happening in Scotland at all, by any chance? No.
I think it's, I could be wrong, and Gareth, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think Wales, Ireland and Scotland is similar money is going to their devolved governments and up to them how they do it. I don't think they've made those decisions yet.
No, we know it's a lump sum under Barnett coming our way, but we don't know what's going to happen to it yet.
Yes.
But presumably the real problem for the devolved governments at this stage of the game is if they look at how this is impacting on the English authorities, it's going to be a bit tricky for them to come up with anything that is going to be better or different, isn't it?
I think we've got different kind of support schemes across the devolved nations that could be used in different kind of ways. So we've got the Discretionary Assistance Fund in Wales, which can offer kind of individualised targeted support. Scotland has a kind of a similar kind of approach there of trying to provide support more individually. Northern Ireland, the people I feel really sorry for at this stage, because they're still operating rate rebates and so forth, of course. So I don't know what their systems are like, but they've got water rates to take account of. And B, of course, they don't seem to have an administration at the moment. So making kind of policy and practice decisions must be pretty difficult there.
Yeah, yes, I could see some real difficulties there. Okay, then. So I think we'll close up. Jake, are there any notes that we should just include?
I'm just wondering if you can offer counselling in the future with everything getting thrown at us, Malcolm, on these sessions. I think we're probably in need of it.
We can, yeah. I mean, actually, that's not necessarily such a bad idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but it is, with tongue in cheek, it is a really serious conversation because, as I said, I think revenues and benefits across the country have done a fabulous job, absolutely fabulous. But it surely isn't fair anymore because I have the argument with my management team at work that we've got so much on our plates, and they keep saying, well, everyone in the council is doing so much during COVID. I'm sorry, I don't get that anymore.
I mean,
No,
just to cheer everybody up as well, the tail end of the discussion on the chat is that of actual instances of councils who are giving out food vouchers as part of discretionary schemes.
That's the household support, and once again shows the different variation in how authorities are set up with counties and within their own structure. We haven't got it in our authority; it's being dealt with by housing.
Yeah, okay. I seem to recall on the WhatsApp group, somebody was asking whether some work might be done around being able to identify impact areas, particularly if this is going to continue down the route of more stuff heading out to local authorities. If there was an interest in it, if anybody wants to contact me and let me know what they're kind of thinking of, then we might be able to put something together to sort of explore how that might be done as a group in some way. I'm just not too certain exactly what it is that people might want. So if you let me know what you might want, then we can think about it and then bring it back into this meeting and say, here's an idea or a proposal. So barring that, and on that cheery note, can I thank my panelists for today, Kevin and Naomi and Gareth, and also those that contributed, Bob and Gary and Marlene, and if I've forgotten somebody, John. Thank you all for contributing. Thank you for the lively notes. I need to get the slide packs out to you all. I think I'm going to email them to everybody. It's just that last week when I made a small change on the Teams group, it seemed to manage to generate a million emails going out to people and readjusting times and things. So I've been a bit cautious about doing it, but I'll see if I can pop the slide pack out to everybody. There's quite a lot now in the slide pack from this week and previous week. So apart from that, I shall see you all next week, hopefully, as long as you're not all gone crazy, in which case I'll come and visit you all next week. And good luck with the rest of the week, and thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
There'll probably be something else for us to do by next week, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Yeah. I'll try and recommend something.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.